That's why we are gathered here today, friends. There's someone had spoiled it and I was like, oh my gosh, I knew I forgot something. My inability to see red flags in men. That's all I have to say. I was so unsure about this book. No. Didn't think that was gonna happen. I was actually really surprised. It just goes on last. I'm sorry. I have to, like, that's why I really want to reread it, because I think my opinion would change. I don't think I would hate it as much. But I was like, no. I've made my decision. I'm sticking with it. I'm gonna see it through. Hi friends, and welcome back to Currently Reading with Kimberly. Obviously, I'm Kimberly. We're going to be talking about the ACOTAR series today, and then I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into where I'm at with Throne of Glass. Let's get right into it. The first book is obviously ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I don't know why it's such a tongue twister for me to say the full title of the first book, but it is. Mixed between romance and fantasy, also known as romantasy. You get a lot of the action, the world building, the character building, and the romance. I'm sure someone has mentioned it to you, but there is what's called smut, so sexy scenes in the books. If you are a parent that's watching this because your teen wants to read these books, I would say, I don't even think I would let my teenager, maybe if they're 17, maybe depending on your relationship and how you feel about when they like read and watch things, but I would not let someone younger than that read these books. I saw that that's like a super common Google search, so just letting you know before we even get into this. The author is Sarah J. Maas. She has written the ACOTAR series, and then the next series is Throne of Glass, and then she also has her Crescent City series. ACOTAR and Crescent City are related. It's highly recommended that you read ACOTAR first before you start Crescent City, because you're going to find there's going to be characters that are going to show up in Crescent City, and if you read that first before ACOTAR, it's gonna spoil it for you. So like some of the more emotional moments in these books, it's not going to be emotional for you. Crescent City books are way in the future, so they're able to have like cell phones and they have technology and things like that. Throne of Glass is like right in the middle. I forget what time period that is. Throne of Glass is not necessarily directly related to ACOTAR or Crescent City. Throne of Glass does talk about some of the things that happened in ACOTAR. There's even something that I noticed in the actual Throne of Glass book that kind of links all of these together, and I'm not going to say it because it will spoil it for you guys, but there are clues onto how it's all connected, so you really just got to pay attention. And of course, Sarah drops those details when you probably aren't paying attention, like you're probably just trying to quickly get through it to get to the next like important stuff. Don't skip it. Do not skip it, because it is like a little grain, a little breadcrumb that she's leaving for you to figure out how it's all connected. What we're going to do for the reviews, I'm going to give you as quick of a review as possible of each of the books individually, and then I'll just kind of give you an overview of how I felt about the series in total. The first one is going to be A Court of Thorns and Roses. Oh my god. I love this book. When I first read it, I was like, this is my favorite book of all time. I love the main character, Feyre, in this book. I don't think that's a spoiler for you guys. I like her. She's awesome. I closely relate to her the best out of all the characters, especially now that I've finished the series. I really enjoyed this book because it's literally like her origin story, and it's how it kind of gets everything started. Like it literally gets the story started. So I really like this book. I like all parts of it. Like there probably isn't a part that I don't like. This book actually made me realize my inability to see red flags in men. So this book is very enlightening when you figure out who it is that you're rooting for. You're like, oh, wait a second. Overall, the book was a really easy read, especially in terms of the world building, character development, character building, the romance, the language that she uses, and how she writes. I think it's relatively easy to follow along and to understand, which I like. It's an entertaining read, like it keeps you engaged. I don't think I was ever bored when I read this first one. I will say, as someone who wasn't really a fantasy reader, other than like I'd mentioned in my first like newbie tag video, obviously I read The Hobbit and that was for school and I enjoyed it, but outside of that I never ventured to like the fantasy section of a bookstore or a library. I think the mix of this having romance and thus making it romantasy really helped pique my interest to start reading it. Even if it didn't have as much romance as it does, I think I still would have really enjoyed the book. The world building is really easy to comprehend as someone who struggles with that, and that's probably why I never really ventured to read fantasy books. Everyone has a different opinion on the characters, whether it's Feyre or someone else that you're going to meet along the way. I find that you're going to like characters that you relate to or you empathize with. I can see all perspectives and I can argue everyone's right and wrong doing or why they're annoying or why they're not annoying. I can even argue that for Feyre, and I love her. But there are people that don't like Feyre, and that's okay. There's going to be other characters that you're going to meet. Maybe not, I mean, you'll meet them kind of in this first book, but you'll get to know them in the later books. So if you hate Feyre, just stick it out, because you're going to get to meet some others, not just someone, but there'll be others that you're going to get to meet, and you might like them more, and that's okay. But one thing I noticed right away in the first book, ACOTAR, Sarah J. Maas likes to foreshadow. Noticed it in the first book, but it really started to become a theme once I read all the books in this series and have begun the Throne of Glass series. I noticed that she will leave little breadcrumbs here and there, and it's up to you to pay attention to it. She usually will drop them in scenes that you think are unimportant, that you think are like a filler, and they're not. She literally is putting that in there for a purpose. One of the characters in the Throne of Glass, like the first book, I don't remember it exactly, but essentially she says that there are no coincidences. As I was thinking back on that, I realized, like, holy crap, like, this is actually Sarah herself. I haven't found anything that she's put in these books that wasn't put in there intentionally. Like, if you're like, that's weird, or I think that might be important later, it probably will be. I actually started annotating the Throne of Glass series. I wish I had done it for ACOTAR, but I didn't even think about it. There's, I think, something for everyone in this first book. Now, as we get through the later books, not so much. There might be like one or two more that will have a little bit of everything, but this one for sure, I would say, is the most well-rounded out of all of them. I really did enjoy this book. It lives rent-free in my head. I think I'll always think about this series. I don't know if it's just because it's my first romantasy series that I've read and I actually also enjoyed, or what, but that probably could be it, that it was just my first and it's always just going to be near and dear to my heart. Now we're going to get into the second book, and it's A Court of Mist and Fury. Everyone absolutely raves, at least from the book talk, the book Insta, and the YouTube videos that I've watched for this series. Everyone loves this book. I'll tell you which ones are like my favorite out of the series, like in terms of like order. All of them for the most part are my favorite, and I really do love this book. I do hold it near and dear because of the couple that you learn about in this book. They're my favorite. I obviously have other favorites too, but they're like my number one slot favorite. And this book is really about their story. It's about how it's going to develop, the nuances, the fine little details, and how it comes to a head, I would say, like towards the end of the book. For those of you that are familiar with this series and you've seen it on the internet already, everyone swears that this is a smutty book, and it is, but it's not as smutty as you would think. There are chapters where it is. I believe like the total number of chapters in terms of smut classification is 5. There might be like maybe 1 or 2 more, but I think it's 5 that everyone has agreed on. Chapters 53, 54, and 55 are like the most well-known ones. I would argue almost that chapters 42 and 48 are better than chapters 53, 54, and 55. Just depends. It just depends on your perspective and on what you like to read, but that's where it landed for me. Still enjoy all the chapters in this book. I personally love it when love stories are developing and I'm learning more about characters and other people in the story. So this book did it for me. However, the first part leading up to where the romance kind of starts to take off, it is hard. It's hard to get through. It does drag a little bit. I think what helped me stay motivated to keep reading and push through some of those more challenging, like boringish chapters, was that I knew it was going to get good, and I just had to get through that part to get to the good part. Like, you have to go through the first part of this book to get to that other part, if that makes sense. Still, obviously, highly recommend this book. I love it. It's a great one. It's one of the favorites. I read it super quick, I think within a week. Probably faster than that. These are pretty thick books. Like, this one is definitely thicker than the first one. It's 626 pages. I don't think I've ever read a book this, like, obviously now that I've gotten through the series, like the last book in the series has the most amount of pages, but before that, this was like the longest book I'd ever read, and I was so proud of myself for finishing it. Third book, so this is ACOTAR, A Court of Wings and Ruin. So much stuff happens in this book. So this one's 699 pages, so a few more than the last one, and it took me almost a month to finish this, guys. It was a hard read, and I think the reason why it was so hard is because so much stuff happens in this book from the beginning to the end. It really felt like 2 books in one. Like, that's how much stuff happened. So in terms of it being action-packed and a lot of things going on, this is it. Plot twist, the action, the romance, the politics in the world that's going on, like even more world building, even more character development, and even getting to meet we meet some new characters too. There's just so much that goes on in this book. After I finished it, I was like, what was that? I literally was like, I don't even know what happened at the first part of the book, because it was like so much stuff. And when I look back now and I watch, like, obviously like the TikToks and the videos and stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that happened in this book. I literally thought it happened in the second book, because like that's kind of like how it felt for my brain. It was really weird. Did I enjoy this book? Not so much, and I think the reason why is because it took me like a month to finish it. It was like 3 to 4 weeks to finish it. I was so slow with it. I got bored and I kind of just like stopped reading it for a few days at a time. And I think if I was more disciplined like how I am now and set a reading goal, whether it's reading like 50, 60, or 100 pages or whatever it might be, as long as I was staying disciplined with it to try to finish it within a 2-week time period, I think my feelings about this book would have been totally different. I think I would have said that I liked it. It was probably one of my tops in the series, but I just didn't feel that way. If I were to go back and reread any of these books, like if I had to pick one to reread, it would be this one, because I'm curious to see, now that I'm more disciplined and that I finished it, if I can enjoy it a little bit more. And then if I can also, I know there's a lot of foreshadowing in here, a lot of foreshadowing, and not even just foreshadowing. I don't even know like what the literary term is when they're constantly repeating themselves. It feels irrelevant to the story, but it's not. There's a reason if something's getting repeated multiple times that something's gonna happen with that little piece of information. That stuff's fun for me. I don't know why, but I think it's fun to predict like the plot and like what's gonna happen, or I'll have like my own theories of like how things are going to end or the way certain scenes are going to go. And so those are things that I enjoy looking for and I enjoy like paying attention to. If you're like that as well, pay attention to things when Sarah J. Maas is writing and she's repeating herself, or it feels like something's being foreshadowed, because it is. Fourth book in the series. It is shorter, which is really nice. It's like 229 pages. I really like this book. Out of all the videos I've watched, out of all the reviews I've seen, which I haven't seen that many because I stopped watching them after like the third book got spoiled for me, because the second book and the third book got spoiled for me just from like comments on a video, so that's why I stopped watching them. For the most part, even before I started reading the series, no one talks about this book. Do I think it's better than the others in the series? No. It is one of my favorites because I felt like after the third book, you really need like a break from all like the emotional like drainage that happens from all of the different like action things that are going on, the things with the storyline and how it's developing. It's a lot, especially when once you find these, like the characters that you're going to connect to and get emotionally invested in, it can be a lot to watch them constantly have to go through things and overcome challenges. Yes, it like makes the story really great and really interesting, but it's also really hard when you're like, oh my god, can we just catch a break, please? It's set during winter solstice, so like think about it like Christmas time. That's like when this book is set. I don't think I even said the name of the title. It's A Court of Frost and Starlight. That's the fourth book in the series. For the most part, like a majority of the book was flipping through the different points of view. You get to see the different characters that by this point you have people that you really like or want to know more about, and you will get to know a little bit more about them in this book, which is nice. If rumors are true, if Sarah J. Maas is going to write a sixth book, that there's obvious like who the two like love interests will be, but she could do 2 additional love interest. From reading this book, you'll find out something about one of the characters, and then when you get to the last book, you'll find another character and you'll be like, oh my god, if they put this storyline together, chef's kiss. I hope she does it. I don't know if she will. She could honestly dedicate a whole book to that other like couple, and that could be like the 6th or the 7th book, depending on how she wants to do it. This book is more of just a break. It's for you to see different points of view of the characters that you already have gotten to know or want to get to know more about, and it sets you up for the last book. That's like really the main point of this book. The very last book in the ACOTAR series is A Court of Silver Flames. I was so unsure about this book. From the videos that I watched before starting this series, this book wasn't talked about. Like, everyone talks about the first 2 books. Just so you guys know, like, I don't think I've mentioned this, but I read all of these books. When I'm doing these reviews and I'm reading, guys, I'm actually reading and making sure I comprehend. Like, sometimes I'll have to go back through and reread something because I'm like, I don't think I was like paying attention when I read it. I was like, wait a second, I need to reread that. I don't skim. Like, we don't do that here. Like, I'm reading all of the pages. Like, this one has 751 pages, aside from, like, the acknowledgements. I'm reading every single one of those pages and making sure that I comprehend and understand. And this was the longest book that I've ever read. I don't care if that's embarrassing. I'm proud of it personally, and I was also proud to have this finished in a week. This was when I learned, like, okay, you know what? We're not going to do what we did in the 3rd book and just take our time. We are going to read 100 pages a day, or as many as I can get, like close enough to 100, and we're going to make it happen. And I made it happen, and I was so happy I did, and I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed this book so much. The second reason is because I would say that not as much action happens in this book compared to the 3rd one, compared to A Court of Wings and Ruin. What happens in this one is a lot of character development and character building. Like, we find out a lot more about some of the side characters in the first, like, 3 to 4 books. You kind of learn more about them. Some people connected with the characters that are, like, I would say the main focus in this book better than the first, like, 3 to 4 books. That's okay. Like, everyone's going to connect with, like I said, different characters. I didn't think I was going to connect with the main characters in this one, but I was going to, like, be drudging through this, and it was just going to be just to get it done. No. First, I was kind of like, all right, let's see what's going to happen. Like, I'm a little uncertain. I'm a little skeptical. As I kept reading, I found myself actually wanting to make time for this book more so than the first book. Didn't think that was going to happen. I was actually really surprised. There are a lot of good quotes in this book, too. If you're someone that likes to get tattoos from, like, book quotes, this is the one for you. I can't really say too much more about this book because I'm afraid I will give you spoilers. Just know that I really did like this book. Much as I didn't like the main characters at first when going into it, I ended up developing my own love for them. Maybe in another video I'll preface that there will be spoilers, and then I'll rank everyone based on, like, who's my favorite and stuff, but I won't do that in this one just because I don't want to spoil it for you guys, like I said. Highly recommend. The last book honestly was a good finish to the, it's not a finish to the series, obviously, because Sarah J. Maas has officially announced that we are going to get a 6th ACOTAR book. Everyone thinks it's going to happen in, like, 2 years from now, but who knows? It could come out a little bit sooner, but I would probably anticipate 2 years. Like, don't think she's going to be coming out with an ACOTAR book this summer. In terms of how I felt about this series as a whole, obviously I love it. Obviously it's so far my favorite series. I'm sure eventually I'll read more series that'll be my favorites. It's hard for me to rank series. Maybe eventually I'll get to that point. I'll have to figure out, like, a grading scale, but as of right now, there's just either favorites or there's, like, I like the, you know what I mean? Like, there isn't, like, this is, like, number 1 and that's number 2. Like, we're not there. In terms of my favorites in the series, I would say the last one and the first one tie, right? Because I love Feyre. Obviously, the last one's not going to be about Feyre. I'll give you that spoiler, but I'm sure, like, you'll figure that out on your own. That's not really a spoiler. I can't not like this book. Like, if they're my favorite couple, come on. This is the last one. And then I would say, like, A Court of Starlight and Frost was my 3rd favorite, and then ACOTAR just goes on last. I'm sorry. I have to, like, that's why I really want to reread it, because I think my opinion would change. I don't think I would hate it as much. I really do recommend this series. I love it. Overall, as a whole, it's a great romantasy/fantasy for people that are interested in getting into it, but are uncertain if they're actually going to like it. This is a good one to start with. If you're on a budget like I am, like, check out Amazon. Like, don't be scared to do that. They do now have, like, a points program, which is kind of nice. Like, once you build up so many points, you can get free books and use them. Would I recommend this series to a friend? Obviously. That's why we are gathered here today, friends. I am recommending it to you. If you're someone that likes romance and likes fantasy books, or likes one of those, you're probably going to like these books. Oh my gosh, I knew I forgot something. Y'all say this is steamy? This eats that book. This is steamy, okay? This goes above and beyond what I thought SJM was capable of. I just was not anticipating the way those scenes go in the last book compared to, like, the way she wrote the second book, Akamath. I was not expecting Silver Flames to literally be flames. As I promised, I am going to give you guys like a sneak peek where I'm at currently with the Throne of Glass series. Everyone has a debate over the reading order. I am just going to say that you need to do your research and you need to make the best decision for yourself. Everyone has their own opinions though. Everyone is going to make their own decisions for themselves. I just ask that everyone is respectful of my opinion and my decision, as well as anyone else, especially if you're commenting on the video. Please be nice to each other. Just humans trying to have a good time and just like live our life. And we're allowed to make our own decisions. And if you don't agree with them, that is fine and you can voice it. Just be kind about it. Like, you don't have to be mean. Sarah J. Maas officially announced that she would recommend, if you're going to read her books, that's ACOTAR, the Throne of Glass series, and Crescent City series, that you read them in order of publication, which is, I think that makes the Assassin's Blade, which this is the number one hot topic when it comes to reading order. This is the one that really puts people's undergarments in a twist. This one, I think, according to publication, I believe it's the 4th book, if I remember correctly. It's either the 3rd or the 4th. The debate online is that you read this one first because she did announce that it's a prequel to the actual start of the series. And if you notice, at least on my printed books, the order is Assassin's Blade, then Throne of Glass. That's in this one, and in Assassin's Blade, it's Assassin's Blade and then Throne of Glass. And why I decided to read Assassin's Blade first is that people that I have similar like reading opinions with recommended this first, that they had the best experience with the Throne of Glass series since reading this first. They also said because there would be no spoilers. However, I don't know how I freaking found it. I'm pretty sure, yet again, it was like a comment on a video that was supposed to have no spoilers. Someone had spoiled it and I was like, And I almost debated about not reading this first because of that, but I was like, no. I've made my decision. I'm sticking with it. I'm going to see it through. I think that I've come to the conclusion, the hot topic, right, about which one of these you're going to read first. I don't think it matters. If you read this first, yes, you will have a spoiler of what happens in this book. Though, from my personal experience, this one was hard for me. This one was hard. I stuck it out and I'm glad I did. I would say once she got back to the city in Rifthold, it got better. I would recommend, if you're someone that you're reading this first and you're like, man, I can't really, I'm having a hard time here, just get to the part where she gets back to the city. So that's a little more than halfway through the book. And if you're still not into it, you're probably not going to like the series. It's pretty much the same stuff. Like, it's going to be the politics in the city. You're going to be following Selena. I think it's how you say it. It's like Selena. I know I pronounced it wrong in my newbie tag video. I apologize. Because of where this one ends, and I grew an emotional attachment to Selena, I was so freaking excited to start this book. I have not been bored reading this book. I love this book. Really surprised that some of the people that I usually trust for like book reviews and book opinions, they are struggling with this book. And one of them didn't finish it, and then the other one's like, I'm trying to make it through. And I'm just like, I don't get like how you have that opinion, because I love this book. And I'm starting to think it's because I read this one first. I'm just saying. I'm probably wrong in that, but again, this is just my perspective, okay? So be kind in the comments if you have your own opinions. You're welcome to share them. Just be polite and respectful about it. I hope you enjoyed this book series review. It's the first one I've done on my channel. In case you don't know, I'm currently stuck in the Sarah J. Maas universe, so once I get through all of these books, then I will venture on to all of the wonderful romance and fantasy books that I have on my to be read list. If you have books that you want to recommend to me that you absolutely love and you want to share, leave them in the comments. I put them in my notes app on my phone, and I also have a Goodreads account that I add it to my want to read list, so I do keep those suggestions, so feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like this video, give it a like, let me know, help YouTube know that I'm doing a good job. If you want to stick around, you want to be friends, go ahead and subscribe. Hope you guys do. I hope you want to stick around, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you again, guys. Have a good day. Bye.